G'day so-and-sos, welcome to my sewing room. My name's Kathy and I have another fun bag for us to make this week. So this one is another beginner level bag. It doesn't have any hardware. If you are a more experienced bag maker or sewer, then you'll be able to just smash it out and make heaps of them if you like. So it has 2 slip pockets on the inside, handles that we just make ourselves, and not a bit of hardware in sight. Okay, well, I'm just ready to get right into it, so let's get cracking. Let's have a look at my supplies, my fabric, and my interfacing. So, cutting mat, a couple of good size acrylic rulers, rotary cutter, scissors, snippers, some chalk, as always, my little purple thing to help me poke out my corners and to keep my fingers away from the needle at the sewing machine, a heap of clips and some pins. And I've got a dinner plate to help me shape my corners. Don't worry if your plate isn't the same size as my plate. It's just so long as each piece is the same and it's all consistent. Then my fabric. I'll be using a cotton drill and a cotton duck for the outside and a cotton woven for the lining. If you just have all cotton woven, that's fine. I'm just using the duck and the drill because it's just a little bit thicker for the outside. Now we'll go through our sizing. I'll pop it up on the screen, but it'll be in the description box also. So don't worry about rewinding and whatever. Just go to the description box and write it down. So I will cut 2 straps out of my cotton drill, 22.5 by 4 inches, and I'll cut 2 of those. Then my accent piece is 10 inches by 15 inches. It's out of the cotton duck, and I'll cut 2 of those. Then my accent pieces are 8 by 15, and I'll cut 4 of those. I'll cut 2 slip pockets, which are 6.5 by 12. And then my 2 lining pieces, and I'll cut them 24 by 15 and 2 of those. So for the outside bits, I will use a medium weight fusible fleece. And for the lining bits, I'll just use a light iron-on interfacing. Don't interface your pieces yet. We're going to put together the exterior first and then we'll interface. Let's look at putting our exterior pieces together. So I have my accent piece and it's right side up. I'm going to grab one of my side panels and I'm going to place it right sides together against my accent piece. So pretty side to pretty side. Now, if you're using a solid color like I am, it might be a little bit hard to tell which is the right side and which is the backing. But if you can't tell, then no one else is going to be able to tell either. So don't stress too much about it. So they are right sides together, and I'm going to line up those sides. And then I'm going to clip all down this side. Like that. And then I'll do the same thing with the other piece. I'll grab this piece and I'll place it right sides together against the accent piece. Line up the sides, make sure the top and bottom are nicely lined up, and whack some clips down that side as well. And then we'll take them over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these down at 1/2 inch on either side. And I will get the other one ready exactly the same. Cool. Okay, let's take these over to the sewing machine and sew down these clipped sides at 1/2 inch. Okay, so we've got a really decent seam allowance. So make sure you add around that 1/2 inch mark and backstitch. And I might even use a magnet so that I stay consistent on all of my pieces. And backstitch. Cool. So there's our exterior pieces sewn together. Now I'm going to press open all of the seams, so prepare it for top stitching. So I'm just going to push the seam to either side, open it up and give it a good iron. And then we'll take it back over to the sewing machine and we'll top stitch it from the other side. Cool, it's looking pretty already. Okay, we're going to take it back over and we're just going to top stitch down on either side of that join. So make sure that your seam is laying open underneath your work, and I'm going to be at about 1/8 of an inch, and my stitch length is a little bit longer. It's 4.5 because we are top stitching. And I'm going to keep the side of my foot right up against this seam. Now is not the time to be playing bobbin chicken. So if you haven't checked your bobbin, then make sure you have plenty of thread in there so that you don't run out halfway down, because you don't want to see that join. So I'm just going to go along each side just like this. Get to the bottom, just drop a couple of stitches in to get around to the other side and come back up the other side. We're done. So that's all our pieces sewn together and top stitched. Now we can go ahead and interface all of our pieces. So I'll go and do that and then see you back here in a moment. Now we're going to look at shaping our pieces. So I'm going to be using a dinner plate. It doesn't matter if your dinner plate is a different size to mine, just so long as all your bottom sides are consistent. But if you're an Aussie and you shop in Kmart, you've got one of these. So I'm going to have my work orientated so the long edge is towards me and I'm working on the bottom. So I'm going to turn it right side down, grab my dinner plate and pop it in this bottom corner. I'm just going to make sure that it's touching the side and the bottom and give myself a chalk mark like that. Then I'm going to measure down from this top side 6 3/4 inches. And I'll just pop up over that. 6 3/4 and give myself a bit of a chalk mark there as well. Just like that. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing on each bottom edge of each of my 4 pieces. Okay, so that's all my bottoms marked. Now I'm just going to cut these curves out of all of my pieces. Okay, so there are all of our pieces shaped. Now let's have a look at these slip pockets. So I'm going to place them right side up in front of me, fold them in half and just give it a little bit of a press. Then across this top edge, I'm just going to give myself a 3-inch mark and then just whack some clips on there. Now that is just to give me a turnout hole. So when we take these over and sew these at a moment, I'm going to start from the bottom edge, go up and then to this chalk mark, and then same thing on that side, and I'm not going to sew that bit. And I'm going to do that to both of them. So again, just give myself a 3-inch chalk mark up the top, 3-inch gap, whack some clips on, and we'll take that over and sew it down. So I'm going to start at one of these chalk marks, and I'm around 1/4 inch seam allowance and 3.5 mil stitch length. And I'm just going to remember to backstitch. And then when I get up to this corner, I'm going to lift my presser foot, pivot 45 degrees, so this corner is coming out like a little triangle, drop 1 stitch, pivot again, and then down this side. That'll just make that corner a little bit easier to poke out and make it sit a little bit nicer. And then other side, we'll start down here, about 1/4 inch seam allowance. Nice and close to the top, pivot 45, drop 1 stitch in, turn, and up to my chalk mark and backstitch. And I'll do the other one exactly the same. rotate these over and turn them out. So there's my slip pockets. Now I'm just going to snip away the top of these corners, just making sure I don't get too close to my stitches. And then I will turn them out and iron them out. So I want to make sure we poke out these corners. This is where my little purple thing comes in handy. Just poke those corners out. And I've got my iron heating up. Okay, grab my iron and just fold that hole in where it naturally wants to sit. And give that a good iron. And I'll whack some clips along that hole, and then we'll take that back over to the sewing machine, and we will just top stitch on this top edge only to close up that hole. And I'll prepare this one exactly the same. Okay, let's go top stitch these guys down. I'm top stitching, so my stitch length is around that 4.5. And like I said, we're just going along this top edge, and I'm around 1/8 of an inch. So nice and close to that edge, but I want to make sure I'm catching both sides of that pocket. Back stitch. Looks good. And same thing. And then we can go pin these guys in place to sew them onto our lining. Let's look at getting these slip pockets on. So I'm going to take my lining piece and I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to find my centers first. So I'm going to give myself a snip at the top and the bottom, just a little snip, just so I can find my centers. Open him up. Then I'm going to take my slip pocket, I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm just going to crease it like that. So then I can see the centers on that. I've given myself a nice line. And I'll measure up 3 inches from the bottom. 1, 2, 3. And I will line up that crease mark that I made in my pocket with my bottom center snip. And place it like that. And whack a couple of pins in there to hold him in place. And then we can take that back over to the sewing machine, and we can sew down along the sides and the bottom, leaving the top open, of course, for our pocket. I'll get the other one prepared exactly the same. Righto, let's go sew those on. Okay, my stitch length is still the same, around that 4.5, and I'm going to be around 1/8 of an inch, so nice and close to the side. Starting at this top corner, little back stitch, and just work my way around. When I get to this bottom corner, I'm going to leave my needle down in my work so that I can pivot without it moving. and continue around. And don't forget to backstitch. So there's our slip pockets all sewn on. Now what I'm going to do is place my lining pieces right sides together and just marking up or lining up those center snips with each other. Cool. Then I'm going to grab my chalk, and from that bottom center snip, I'm going to measure 4 inches in one direction and then 4 inches in the other direction and give myself some chalk marks. And I'll just put them on the other side as well in case I have it that side up at the sewing machine, because that would be my turnout hole and I don't want to forget my turnout hole. Catherine Ann, I'm terrible for it. Okay, so lining up all those edges nice and neat, and then I'll start putting some clips all the way around. And once I have this done, we'll do the other piece as well. And when we take it over to the sewing machine, we're going to sew at 3/8 of an inch. But we're going to start at these chalk marks that we made earlier, those 6 3/4 chalk marks that we made from the top. That's where we're going to start sewing from. We're going to leave that top bit open on both our lining and our exterior. And of course on our lining, we are also going to leave that turnout hole open. But I will show you at the sewing machine, of course. Okay, that one's clipped up. I'll get the exterior ready and then we'll take those over. That looks good to me. Okay, I'll take both these pieces over and we'll sew them down, remembering to leave our turnout hole and making sure that we start at that 6 3/4 mark all the way around on all pieces, and we're just sewing that bottom edge. So I'm going to start on my lining piece and starting on that chalk mark, like I said, so that 6 3/4 chalk mark that we made earlier. And remember to backstitch. And I'm just going to work my way around to that chalk mark I made for the turnout hole. And I'll stop here and backstitch, cut my thread away, and then start on the other side of that turnout hole. And then just work my way back up to the other 6 3/4 inch mark on this side. And I'll do the exterior pieces the same, except I won't leave a turnout hole on that bit. And backstitch. Too easy. So there's our pieces sewn together. Now we're going to clip these curves. So what I'm going to do, grab my scissors, and I'm going to start right at that 6 3/4 mark that we made. And I'm going to snip into my seam allowance, nice and close to the stitches, but not actually hitting the stitches. And then I'm going to clip all the way around, as close to the stitches as I dare, and about 1/4 inch apart, right up until round the other side. And when I finish, I'll make sure that I finish right on that 6 3/4 mark again. When I do it to my lining piece, I'll start at that 6 3/4 mark, come around to where my turnout hole is, stop, I'll leave all that bottom bit, and then I'll start again at the other end of my turnout hole up to that 6 3/4 mark. There we go, there's those bits done. So there's all our curves clipped. Now just make sure, like I said, that you're starting right up on that chalk line. Now if you went too far and hit your stitches anywhere, just take it back over to the sewing machine and reinforce it. But otherwise, I have got my iron ready and my lining piece in front of me. I'm going to fold open this top bit, that bit that we didn't clip. So fold that open and just give that a hit with the iron. Nice and hot. And then fold open the other side as well. And then I'm just going to do all sides on both the lining and the exterior. Oh, the same as that. Hot. Cool. Okay, so I've got all the edges clipped and I've got those side bits ironed down. Now I'm going to pop my lining to one side and grab my exterior and just turn it the right way out. So my exterior is going to be right side out, and I'm going to leave my lining piece the wrong side out. And now all my fabric today is from Spotlight as well. So if you have a Spotlight near you and you like it, that's where I got it from. Cool. Now grab my lining. My lining's still inside out, and I'm going to place my exterior into my lining and just wiggle it all in there so those curves all match up and are all lined up. Now this next bit we might need to fiddle with a little bit, and it might take you a little bit of time, but you want to get it as right as you can. So really take your time with it and fuss with it a little bit. What we're going to do is take one piece of my lining and the piece of exterior that's next to it. And so they are right sides together now. And starting right down where we finished sewing, I'm going to start clipping. So I'm going to wiggle until they are rightly matched up. They're lined up where I stopped and started sewing on that 6 3/4 inch line, and then start whacking some clips up. And I'm going to do that to all 4 of the sides. Just matching them up as best I can, and start down from that 6 3/4 inch line and work your way up to the top. And I'll just start whacking clips on. Okay, last couple up here. So really take your time and just fuss with it and just getting it sitting exactly where you want it to the best that you can. It's not an easy bit to do. I mean, it's easy, but it's a bit fiddly and tricky. Cool, now we're going to take it over to the sewing machine, and we are going to sew along all of those clipped edges. So this is what your work should look like. We've got it stitched along here, and then I've got the lining and the exterior clipped together on both sides. So I'm going to start up on this top edge, and I'm about 3/8 of an inch still, but I want to make sure I'm catching both sides. Back stitch, and then work my way down, keeping my fingers away from that needle. Come down to this bottom bit. Then I'll lift my presser foot and fold that bit underneath, the rest of my bag underneath. Do a couple of stitches over, pivot and come up. And just make sure you're not sewing over anything that you don't want to sew over, that the rest of your bag is all caught up underneath there. And back stitch. Cool. Now the other side, the same. So pop that under there. Make sure the rest of my bag is all up out of the way. There's nothing underneath that shouldn't be. Back stitch. Work my way down to this corner. Fold the rest of the bag up underneath and turn so I can come up, do a couple of stitches over, and then work my way up. So that corner bit can be a little tricky, but just go the best you can, and before you go back to the table, just check and make sure that you caught both sides, and if you need to, just go over it again. And back stitch. So this is what we should look like at this stage. So our pieces are sewn together, and then our sides are sewn together with our lining and exterior. Cool, so just make sure that you've caught both sides at your corners and all the way up. And if you haven't, just go over it again, it's fine. And then we're just going to clip along the top edges on both sides, and then we'll take it back over and close up the top edges. And we don't have too much more to go. This comes together really quickly. So that side and this side, and then we'll just take it over and sew it again at around 3/8 of an inch. Cool. One more. Let's go do that. So just make sure that you're not sewing over anything that you don't mean to. So I've got the rest of the bag tucked under and out of the way. And my stitch length is still around that 3.5 mil, and again about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'll just go across the top of both sides. And just remember to backstitch. Cool. Okay, now I'm just going to clip the corners on all 4 of the top sides. Just be careful not to hit your stitches. Just get some of that bulk out of the way. And then we're going to turn it out, my favorite part. So reach in through that turnout hole and start sliding that lining over the exterior. And I've got my iron heating up, and just poke all that out. And then I'll just give it a hit with the iron. I'll just get it all sitting in place. Poke all these corners out. Cool. Okay, we'll do this turnout hole first. So I'm going to stick my fingers in there in each side and give it a bit of a pull and try and get those sides to sit down where they want to, like that. Give that a bit of a hit with the iron. I'll whack some clips on there and then take it over and close up my turnout hole. My clips. Okay, let's go do that. So I'm going to start a little bit further back than what I think I need to, so that I know I'm catching all of my turnout hole, and nice and close to the edge, so around 1/8 of an inch. And just carefully stitch all the way across. And I'll finish a little bit further than what I think I need to as well, just so I make sure I'm catching all of it. So I can feel it finishes about there, so I'll go a little bit further and backstitch. So there's my turnout hole taken care of. Now I can stuff it all down into my bag and make sure it's all down in the corners, and then I'll give it a hit with the iron. Now we're going to take it back over and we're going to top stitch down along these V side bits that we just did. So I want to make sure that that is all sitting nice and flat. So it's probably easier to take it over to the ironing board and sort of pull it over the edge of your ironing table. So if you feel like doing that, then go ahead, and I will see you over at the sewing machine in a moment, and we'll top stitch these sides down. Okay, we're top stitching, so our stitch length is around 4.5, and we're just going to do these sides on all 4. So make sure that other side is folded down out of the way and you're not accidentally sewing over anything that you don't want to sew over. And little back stitch at the top and just nice and close to the edge at 1/8 of an inch. Now I'm not going to try and pivot and come back up the other side here. I'm just going to come down, back stitch, and then flip him round. And do this side. And we're not going to worry about the top at all because we're going to fold the top down in a moment. So just these sides. Let's look at these straps. Okay, I'm going to grab one of my straps and lay it right side down in front of me. And I'm going to measure up from the bottom edge 2 inches. So that'll be halfway, and give myself a chalk line. Just like that. I've got my iron and my ironing mat ready. Pop that on there. And I'm going to fold up this bottom edge to meet that chalk line and just iron that down. Like that. And then I'll spin it around and do the same thing to the other side. Matching up those edges so they meet smack bang in the middle. Cool. I think I put my table up a little bit. There we go. Okay, then I will fold it in half again. So all those raw edges are in the middle, and give it another good hit with the iron. Now don't go on ahead if you've made straps before. Don't be tempted to go on ahead and sew because we're going to do it a little bit different today. Because we don't want any raw edges anywhere on the ends. Fold that up. Okay, cool. So I'll whack a couple of clips just along the middle just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to get my ends and I'm going to place my ends right sides together. So the back of the strap will be on the back of the strap. And I'm actually going to open up that bit now and line up that edge. So it'll look like that and clip along there. So when we take it over to the sewing machine, we're actually going to sew along that bit first. So I'll prepare the other one exactly the same. And then same thing with the ends. I'll whack a couple of clips along the middle so it all stays put. And then I'll grab these ends and place them right sides together, so pretty side to pretty side. Open it up and whack some clips along there. Okay, let's take this over to the sewing machine. Okay, so I'll be around 3/8 of an inch, and for this first part, my stitch length will be around 3.5. I'll just sew these ends down, and I'll do them both while I've got my stitch length the same. Make sure that's all opened up all the way across. Cool. Now I'll lengthen my stitch length to around 4.5 because I'm going to be top stitching. And what I'm going to do is just flip that closed. So I'll just fold in those edges and then fold it in half again. And just whack some more clips on there. Lining up my edges. And then I'm just going to top stitch, starting along that folded edge first, and then I will go along the open edge first is what I mean, and then I'll go along the folded edge. So I'll start at that join and around 1/8 of an inch and just work my way around. Now when I do the other side, I'm not going to turn my strap over. I'm going to keep it with the same side facing up. So I'm top stitching on the same side. That's them done. Now I'm going to have my bag in front of me with the bottom towards me, and I'm just going to open up this top edge. Now from this top bit, I'm going to measure 3 inches and give myself a chalk line across there, like that. Then I'll spin him around and do the same from this end. Measure down 3 inches from that edge and give myself a chalk line across there. Then I'll grab my iron and my ironing mat, and I'm going to fold that down towards the inside and iron that down. So I can now see the exterior. It's folded down over the lining. And this side, and I'll grab some clips wherever I've put my clips. I'll find my clips. Where did I put my clips? Can you see them? We'll find them. Okay. Hang on. Don't know. Found a handful though. All right, I'll whack some clips down along that edge. So that's what it looks like. I've just got that folded down 3 inches. And then on this side, flip that over, fold that down out of the way, and fold this edge down 3 inches to that 3-inch line. I'll be editing and I'll see like the bag of clips in the background staring me right in the face. Don't know what I did. Okay. And then there. Cool. And I'll whack some clips on there just to hold it all in place as we work. Cool. I'll just ditch the iron and the ironing mat. Found them. They're on the floor. Okay. So this next bit, little bit tricky, but I'll show you over at the sewing machine as well. What I'm going to do is grab one of my handles and pop it up under that ironed down bit. And then over at the sewing machine, I'm going to start sewing and then bunching it up and working my handle under as I sew so that my handle will be caught under this bit all the way along. So let's go and do that. Okay, so there's my folded over bit. I'm going to grab my handle and I'm going to pop that up under there like that. So of course it's only going to go over under there a little bit and then it's going to be hanging out at the bottom, and we just readjust as we go. So I'm going to start around 1/2 inch or 3/8 of an inch, say, from the bottom edge, and we're top stitching because the stitch is going to show on the other side, so I'm around 4.5. Just going to readjust that, just not quite happy. Get it exactly how you want it and backstitch a little bit. Now I've swapped out to a slightly heavier needle because I do have some layers going on there. So if you're using a domestic machine, then probably swap out to a jeans needle if you're using heavier fabric like I am. And I'm just going to keep folding that strap up that top edge, and then as I get a little bit further down, I'm going to have to start pulling it at this end and bunching it up a little bit so that I have enough strap to wiggle down underneath there. So it's just going to be a matter of being patient and adjusting as we go. Okay, that's one side. Now I'll do the other. Okay, let's go adjust all this, move it around and have a look. There we go with her handles in. Now I went ahead and just stitched down here and here on all 4 sides just to keep that scrunch where I wanted it to sit. So if you want to do that, go ahead. If you want to leave it just sort of all scrunchy and open, then that's up to you. Okay, guys, if you liked sewing that along with me today, as usual, give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any questions, then leave them in the comment box and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Check out my channel for some other bag making and sewing content, and I will see you next week. Until then, remember, it's only fabric. We can always buy more. See you, peeps. Bugger.